everyone, and welcome to Inspirational Journeys Through Life with Straight Talk with Nolan. I have a journey, you have a journey, but how many of us really share our journeys to help other people? There's thousands of people out there that can resonate with what we've been through in life, and it can assist them and guide them as well. So today, it's my honor and my privilege to welcome Melinda Hardin to our group or to our podcast. And we're going to talk a little about her in a short bit. But just to give you a quick background of her, Melinda grew up in a shadow of grief, seeking answers in wellness, religion, relationships, and in the bottom of vodka bottles. Okay, that should say a lot already, right? Because we've all been through journeys together. She knows what it's like to live a life focused on approval, and she also knows what it's like to emerge from it. Long practiced at reinventing herself personally and professionally, she infuses dreamers and with inspiration to become doers. She's recently launched a book called Uneclipsed. It's about shadows emerging and finding the light as a most recent baby, born through addiction, rediscovering God, and finding fresh courage to shine with purpose as a mother, a wife, entrepreneur, and creative artist. Melinda is at ease with recording. She's also a singer in the band, and she's got a beautiful voice. I've listened to one or two of her videos. It's called The Pretty Goods and has film projects for HGTV and the Magnolia network as well. She's also a yoga instructor, a multi-space Airbnb and event space host, a successful real estate agent, and an entrepreneur partner with her husband, Ben, on several historical building projects. Wow, that's amazing, historical building projects as an entrepreneur. She also has experience as a pharmaceutical sales rep, a corporate wellness director, a birth doula, and a restaurateur. She holds a Master of Arts in Holistic Wellness and a handful of sorted certifications, but will tell you that her greatest lessons have come from parenting her two daughters, Annie and Celia, and I'm sure they're amazing as well. So Melinda, welcome to Inspirational Journeys Through Life with Straight Talk with Nolan. Can you tell our audience a little about yourself?
Yes, well, even listening to that introduction, I get tired thinking that I did all those things. I've been called like a professional plate spinner. I think I'm so spurred on by curiosity. I just hold life with so much curiosity. So I don't think I had a midlife crisis, but somewhere around, 40s, I had like several mini midlife crises where I kind of took a look and thought, I'm on the trajectory to quote unquote, live the American dream. I'm bogged down with this perfectionism and striving to be what I thought success should look like. But I was really pretty sad. Like I didn't really feel like I was using the energy that I was putting towards success in a career that was, by all accounts, a dream job for other people. And so this alarm kept sounding inside of me, and I actually just couldn't ignore it any longer. And so I jumped ship from the safety of a pension plan and a 401k and just decided to see what it would be like to do the heart's call of my life. I've had some wins and some losses. I started some businesses. I got sober. I wrote a book. I started a band, and I thought, all this fits better than the other stuff. So I'm just sort of continuing to map out what feels the most authentic.
That's amazing. And I love what you said towards the end as well. It's all about being authentic as well, right? And we can only learn that authenticity through life experiences. And, no matter what we go through, we have to just use that as an opportunity to start becoming real. And with the listeners out there as well, I'm sure some of you have had experiences in life as well. So we're going to be talking a lot to Melinda today, and we're going to start off with her book as well, because I think it's so fascinating. In fact, the title alone, Uneclipsed, which Melinda will tell us how that came about. But which a book that you've recently published, right? It's about shadows emerging and finding the light. I actually like that, finding the light. It does not matter what age we are at, but we can still find the light as well. I know this from experience because in my late adult years, I'm still finding the light as well. And I know I'm going to grow every single day. Tell us a bit more and why now seemed the right time to write the book.
Well, I had a conversation with someone, one of those what you think are random conversations, and I'm not even sure, it feels like an icebreaker, but they said, if you could describe your word and your world in one life right now, what would it be? And this word eclipsed came out of my mouth. I was like, I feel eclipsed. I feel invisible, even though I'm doing and I'm growing, and we have downtown properties in the middle of a small town. So I have sort of visibility. I didn't feel like my true self was really seen. I felt like it was eclipsed. And everybody sort of has those unveilings of themselves during COVID because we had so much time, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, here I have all this time. How am I going to emerge out of this? And I just ran out of excuses for not writing the book. I was nervous because I live in a small town, and it's kind of like streaking down Main Street when you write a memoir, and people sort of maybe think they know you, but you're like, nope, this is really who I am, and these are the real struggles that I have. And so I realized, people were dying all around us from this pandemic. And I thought, if I were to lose my life, I would have broken my own heart if I did not write this book that's been inside of me for so long. Like, it's now or it's never.
So the timing was perfect as well, right? So
It was.
COVID again has been a blessing in disguise, because
Yes,
it's the first book that you got out.
it was. It was interesting. Right before COVID, I had always wanted to go to this yoga and meditation center called Kripalu. And for Christmas, right before COVID, my husband gifted me with a Jumpstart Your Memoir workshop there. And I did a ton of yoga and a ton of writing, and came home with like this stirring inside of me. And then the world shut down. And so I was primed.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. And glad that it could become a blessing. A lot of people saw COVID as an obstacle and just sat back and did nothing with their lives. But here's another success story that has come up with as well. So congratulations on your book, and well done on it, Melinda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, in your book, just by going in a little, you say that your first addiction was approval. And this need for approval seems to resonate with so many people out there as well, right? It's always like need approval from someone else, etc. How did you kick this addiction of approval?
I wish that I could say that I kicked it as thoroughly as I have kicked the addiction to alcohol, but it's something that, like, you just walk away from alcohol. That's not easy. I made that sound easy, but you don't go to the liquor store anymore. But when you go out into the world is always raising the bar, particularly for women, to meet the next best, to jump through another hoop, to reach that ever raising bar, to get that carrot that's dangled in front of us. And I just was tired. And I've had to really extract, who doesn't like to feel pretty or feel smart or whatever, but I felt like my drive was outside. It was all extrinsic. And so it was just getting quiet to go into the well of self, where the divine lives in all of us, and just shut out the shouts so that I could hear the whisper to say, I don't want to live for this audience, this grand audience, to tell me who I am. And I feel like the more that you know who you are, in God, in the divine, then the less you need for other people to give you their stamp of approval. So it's an ongoing wrestling, right? I pick that up and I put it down daily. But it's this that I think it's not that you never pick it up, right? Because it's always there. Sometimes some people just hand it to you, but it's just, are you willing to do the work to put it down? And to tell the truth, I think, is the biggest part of coming out of an addiction with approval, because then you're not living towards someone else's perceived truth of what you should be. You're bold and brave enough to tell your own truth.
Wow. So profoundly said. There's so many nuggets that have come out from that as well. And, to the listeners out there as well, when we speak about approval, like Melinda says, it's got to start from within. if you cannot fix yourself within, don't expect somebody else to try and fix you or give you approval for whatever you're doing in life. And when you talk about approval, Melinda, it makes me think about social media. And the
Oh,
reason why I bring up social media is, if you look at Instagram, for example, it's got all of these filters, etc. A lot of people, especially the youngsters, are changing themselves to be somebody they're not. And why are they doing this? Because they want the number of likes or the number of comments, etc. But they don't, and this is approval in a way, right? Because they want somebody to approve of their picture looking like somebody they're not. And it's such a dangerous game out there as well. What
well,
advice?
it's hard too. It's, it starts so young and it's not ill-intended, right? I have 2 girls, right? I want them to do what their teachers say. I want them to do what Ben and I say. We want they don't grow up under this, like, be a good girl, but I certainly did growing up. I mean, there was not, it was just like, please your teachers, please your parents, then it's please your peers, then it's please your partners. Then there's books like How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, we're trained to please. There's nothing wrong with listening to your teachers and your parents. It's just when your driving force becomes finding your worth in that at all costs. It's an entanglement, right? It's not just like I'm in this road or I'm in that road. It's like sometimes I got to drive in this road, but still know who I am. And it's a web of intricacy.
No, true. And I mean, if you look at where we all have come from, we come from this conditioned background. And, a lot of that needed to be unlearned. With the generation that we have today as well, and the resources they have, is much more than what we had. So it actually works in their favor in a way, if they only take it and use it in that positive way rather than in the negative way. And I always like to talk about that Instagram example because there's so many things that can go wrong from it. And a silly example would be, let's say you meet somebody on Instagram, you're having a chat, and then you decide to meet for coffee, and you realize, wow, but you're not the same person. And immediately it's going to lead to conflict, right? And who knows, that conflict will lead to gender-based violence or whatever is out there as well. So the point that we actually saying to the listeners is, it's quite dangerous. Be you, be yourself. You are a unique being. Don't be ashamed of who you are. And you don't need to get approval from anyone else to be yourself, right? That's the key.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Thank you for
Exactly.
that. Thank you for sharing that. And while we're talking about addiction as well, I know you talk very openly about your addiction and your recovery from alcohol as well. In your bio, you mentioned about the vodka as well. And a lot of people don't like to talk about this. I, for one, I've been down this road as well. And, we learn our lessons as well. So tell us more about when you were actively drinking and now.
Mm-hmm. I think the reason that I talk about it is because for some reason we have normalized overconsumption. And so you see these billboards and it's like this woman and she looks very sexy and put together and she's got her glass of champagne. What they don't show you is at the end of the night when she's fighting with her husband, falling down the stairs, she's ripped her dress, she's belligerent. And so we sort of glorify drinking. And I just want to say, hey, if you can drink and you can do that with moderation, great. It literally is terrifying to me to think about moderating something that had such a hold on me. And I think in so many instances, this is another thing with COVID. I mean, drinking rates, day drinking dependence, all of those percentages went up. But I think we marched towards, like, we have mommy juice and we have these cute names for it. And I think so many times we can be doing the thing in the daily life or in the social settings. And if we're not careful, we like, oh, it's a bad day, I'll just take off the edge. Or I'll just, it's just been a tough day, I'll just have a glass of wine and just make myself feel better about it. And if we're not careful, we can find ourselves on the other side of the line of dependence. And then everything we have is at risk. We use the capacity and the energy that we could have towards those deferred dreams, towards the things that we really have an interest in, towards eye contact and intentional conversations with our 8-year-old, because we're all of the sudden nursing something that was a ritual that has become a habit, that has become an addiction. And so the biggest difference is when I was in active addiction, my capacity, my energy capacity went towards nursing that addiction, keeping it under wraps, still trying to get up and manage life. Um, my spirituality was burdened with shame and guilt. And now I feel like I'm living life in Technicolor. It's like my kids will be like, "Will you play with me?" And I'm like, "Yes." And that I mean it, and I'm there. And all of that energy that I used towards nursing my addiction, and then that early stage of coming into recovery where you feel like you're catching on fire from the inside and you can't extinguish it and you just are trying to survive. But you do get past that point and you realize I've got all this capacity, all this energy. And if you're brave and if you see what you're made of, then you fuel that towards recreating better, trying new things, not being afraid to fail because you just did colossally and
Yeah.
you didn't die. And so that's the biggest difference is like bravery and coming out of that guilt and shame. I felt like alcohol was always pushing my head underwater, and coming into sobriety is like taking the deepest of breaths.
Wow. Beautifully said. And of course, alcohol does do that as well. So, my personal experience as well, I used to also drink a lot, indulge, and it was always about that moderation. I did not know when was the last one, because the
Right.
last one was always the last one, right? And you
Yeah.
continued on this journey. And what I've realized now in recently, in fact, is that when I do have a lot, the next day when I wake up, it's like with a heavy head, and you lose like a whole days of productivity or really time that you could be using it to such better benefits as well, right? So
Yeah. Or you're recalling like, do I need to call someone and apologize for that thing I said? I can't exactly remember what it's kind of gray, but I think it was sharp and it may have been idiotic or whatever. And so like I remember getting sober like the first New Year's. I woke up on New Year's Day and I had the biggest grin. I was so hydrated because we had gone somewhere and I just drank a ton of water. And like I was like, I don't have to, first of all, I woke up and it was morning, not noon. I was like, I don't have to make any phone calls. I don't have to apologize for being just an idiot to my husband. I didn't pick a fight. This is amazing. And I feel great.
that's beautiful. That's amazing. And that's so true as well, right? Because we do get carried away and we forget exactly what we've done the previous night. And you don't
You
know whether
do.
it was
And you,
embarrassing or not.
right. And then you can be dealing with conflict and you're like, oh, I just said what I felt. There was not disproportionate emotions attached to alcohol that showed up in the conversation. It was just an actual conversation. Those seem a lot easier to get through.
Yeah. How do you feel now? I mean, I must ask you this, Chris. How do you feel now when you see somebody that's overindulged?
Well, usually, in social settings, you go out and people are like, is it okay if I drink? And you're like, yes. And you feel kind of weird because people ask that you're around. But I always am on the lookout for that person that I turned into later on in the night. And that keeps me going. But I see that, and it's never like, oh, girl, it's never judgment. It's always like, oh, I want to put my arm around them and just say, could you consider? Could you consider a different way for you? Because I'm telling you, it's never not worth it. I think that's why I've been so outspoken. It's not the only badge I wear for sure, but that's why I've put myself out there in this little zip code that I live in, just because people have said, eh, I had no idea. And so they'll come and talk to me, and they'll say, how can you show me a better way? How did you do it or whatever? So when I see people out, it breaks my heart because I wonder like, what is the beautiful thing they are kept from doing by this? And
Yeah.
I just want to see it. Yeah.
And if you reversed it around, at one stage we would have been in that same boat, and people,
That's right.
our loved ones would say, but why are they in this state?
Yes.
So much of learnings in life, eh? That's the
Uh-huh.
beauty of life.
I know it is. That's why I'm so glad. That's why I want to live to be like 100. So I'm like, I'm just getting started.
Same year as well, just getting started. I got to reach that 100 age as well. So
Yeah.
you've given a few words of encouragement to anyone who may be under the weight of addiction. What else can they do, would you say?
One thing that I started to do was sort of catalog all the things that I'd said, like, oh, because I used to just whine. Oh, I wish I could write a book. I mean, I wish I could write a book. Well, just get some paper and start, right? It's like I would started to think about all the things that I would do if my day didn't end at 4 o'clock.
Uh,
And so I would just say I had two pieces of paper. One, and they had two body outlines. Okay. So on one of them I wrote, like, this is what I feel like now: congested every morning, head hurts, you know, I'm doing workouts, I'm teaching them actually. But like every time I do a burpee, I'm feeling sick. My inflamed joints. I am lethargic. I'm melancholy. My mood switch. I wrote all that. This is the me now. And then with the other outline, was like, wonder what it would be like if I was clear headed. So I wrote, like, I imagined who Melinda would be, all in, a totally awake in her life. And so I looked at that picture, and I imagined that version of myself, and just said, okay, I'm going to try to live into her. But I think the terrifying thing we do is, instead of imagining what we might look like in sobriety, and sobriety from whatever addiction, right? But what we might look like in freedom, we just imagine how hard it is to get the chains off. So I would lie awake in bed and be like, how am I going to do my 40th birthday if I don't have a bourbon or 8? Like, what am I actually going to, what would that look like? Instead of imagining, well, isn't that be so fun? I could have a group of girls over and make dinner for them, and that would be great. And we could have great conversation, and I could hear their hearts. And so I think not imagining that transition phase, but like, what's on the other side of that? And then it makes that transition phase worth it.
Wow, so that's a good comparison as well, for anything in life as well, to write it down and see the offsets of it as well, because it's always good to see the bigger picture as well. And it really is up to us as well. It comes back to choice on what we really want to do in life and how long more we want to live as well, because we know that if we overindulge in alcohol, it's going to limit the amount of years that we are on this earth as well.
Yeah.
So,
That's right. And I mean, I was into wellness and still am, but I mean, I would have like a kale shake in the morning, right? But then how many vodka tonics at night? So I just think about the damage I did to my body, even with optimal nutrition on board, before I started onboarding, poison.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we do physically, but I think I do feel like the root cause of addiction for so many people, I didn't have the words for this even until a couple of years ago, but I realized, I didn't realize this when I was drinking. It became clear in my sobriety, but it's like, the root of my drinking was because I was grieving not living as the girl I wanted to be. I was drinking for the girl, never had a voice. And this is someone who talks a lot, but it wasn't my own voice. So I think so often we grieve the life we thought we'd have, and this is the one we have instead. And so instead of going and making a whole new one, we just stay stuck.
And staying stuck is the cause, of course, because it's comfort. At the end of the day, we feel content with who we are, and we don't want to. Well, we're kind of scared to venture out as well. And the one point you mentioned about alcohol, which is key for all the listeners as well. If you are turning to alcohol, just remember, and always remember this: it's a temporary solution. It's not a full-time solution. You got to fix yourself through whatever you are going through at that moment, be it depression or anything like that as well, especially around depression. If you want to take to alcohol for depression, it's going to solve the problem for those few hours. Then you're going to be back in that state. So rather go down to the root cause and fix that, which will give you a longer term fix rather than short term fix as well.
That's right. That's right.
Beautiful. Thank you so that was a good chat around the alcohol. I want to move more to the professional side. I know you've worn a lot of hats, professionally speaking. Can you tell our listeners about your journey through life? Tell us about your move from corporate America into entrepreneurship. I'm really interested about this because I've also moved on from corporate into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Your version of it as well, or your story of it.
I stumbled into pharmaceutical sales, and I say that like because I showed up at an interview thinking that you had to do several interviews before you got a job. That's what I was always told. Like, oh, it's like an audition. Like, don't expect to get the job. So I didn't go in nervous. I went in fully confident and on fire, just like, oh, this will cool. This will be good practice. But I was so naive. I wasn't nervous. I didn't really think I was up for the job. I just thought this would be good practice. So I landed this great job, great salary, great benefits, like right out of the gate. I was 27. And at the minute I got there, I thought, oh, I'm not sure this is like a really good fit, but the money's great and the benefits are great. I've got a car, I've got a pension, I've got a 401k, and, I was in platinum handcuffs. But the whole time, and I was pushing medicine, which there's a place for medicine, but I was pushing it as if it was front line. And in the meantime, I started to learn more about holistic wellness and behavior modifications. Again, I wasn't drinking heavily then. So all this is sort of interlayered. But so this job I kept for 13 years. And along the course of the last few, we had these downsizes. They called them something creative to make us all not feel like somebody was going to lose their job. But in fact, that's what they were. And I kept living through those. I kept still maintaining my job. And every time I would get on the other side of the phone call that says, congratulations, you've kept your job, I thought, oh, okay. Meanwhile, like other people weren't keeping their job and they were sad. And I thought, okay, like I'm good at this and the cards are in my favor or whatever, but I'm still mismatched. And so because it was a lucrative job, I started to use the funds to like get other certifications for things that I was really interested in. And I thought, oh, this totally aligns with who I am and want to be. And I was started to drink more and more because I hated my job more and more. And I started to think about what else I could do. And my husband is he's just really brave. His propensity for risk is a little bit off the charts. So he doesn't scare easily. And he was like, why don't you just quit your job? And I was like, it's our insurance. It's this big paycheck. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. He's like, yeah, we'll figure it out. So I finally, after so many times of, living through layoffs and retaining my job and started to have my eye on wellness and what that could look like. I leapt, as they say, and the net kind of appeared. I had a doctor who I had called on for a number of years who knew my interest in wellness, who had a patient who wanted to design a wellness program for his company. And we connected, and that's what I did. It was amazing. 3 weeks after I left pharmaceuticals, I was designing a corporate wellness program. And then, I was teaching yoga and teaching Pilates and teaching nutrition classes. And then my husband and I stumbled across these old buildings in our community. Not stumbled across, they're on Main Street. And we thought, do we stay and live in our hometown? Or do we move to some of these really cool towns that have like a whole lot going on? And so we almost flipped a coin and decided to purchase these buildings in our downtown for nothing at auction. That's a whole story. And we have slowly over the past 10 or so years renovated every square foot of those. We have 75,000 square feet underfoot. So we have 3 Airbnbs, some retail spaces, an event space. And we just kept doing that because we both left corporate America at some point and said, well, if you don't work for the man, so to speak, you've got to be that, all the time creating income. And we just held fast to curiosity and didn't scare when we didn't succeed, because it hasn't all been success. You hit dips.
Yeah.
And you get up and you keep going. So.
Well, that's the life of an entrepreneur, right? You got to hit dips all the time. It's how you maneuver through these dips is more important. And you got to learn the lessons from it and just keep growing and growing and growing from there.
Growing and growing and look for opportunity, right? So then Ben built a couple of houses and I was like, well, I should get my real estate license to sell just the houses that he does. That'll be a fun like side gig. Well, I love it and have built a successful career just in residential real estate. It's just been it's been such a great fit. I absolutely adore it. At the same time, I don't find identity in it. It's just what I do, but it's not who I am. And that also shows a breakup with approval, right? Because If something goes, if you hit a bump, or I don't know. My heart, my passion is in my creative endeavors, in my writing, in my singing, and real estate's the really fun, cool thing I get to do.
Wow. Well, there's nothing wrong with multiple income streams as well, right?
Right. That's right.
And you're living your purpose as well, which is your writing and your music as well. So it's always good. And it's interesting that it took like you stayed in corporate for such a long time until you could find what made you happy as well. And I feel the excitement in your voice when you speak about the singing, when you speak about the writing as well. So that's really great, because it's so powerful for the listeners to understand out there as well that we are on this earth to live purposeful lives. And not saying go and leave corporate or anything at all, not at all. Stay where you are, but also try and live a purposeful life in the same breath. Use your time. Don't just be content with what you have as well. Because
there's that expression like don't miss good for great or something. I don't know, but we were singing, we've had like 5 pretty big gigs this month, our band, and it was so interesting to me. I thought, if I'm sitting and doing a small gig, I'm not disappointed that I'm not at this sold out crowd at the biggest arena in town. Like that's never crossed my mind. I'm like, I'm making music. And so if 4 people or 400 or 40,000 or whatever, like it's not the barometer of my enjoyment, is not the number of people that hear it. And I did think it was so interesting. We got booked for a private event for a medical group. And I thought, these are the people I used to call on in a job I hated. And now I'm doing what I love and they're enjoying it and we're all having a great time.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was neat.
Well, that's about living a purposeful life as well, because you enjoy it and you get paid for it at the same time as well. Yeah. I mean, 5 gigs in a month is absolutely amazing, right? Some people struggle to get 1 in 6 months and to get
It's fun. It's a really good time. We have a great time. Yeah. And it's with my brother too. My brother's in it. So, like my parents were both musicians. So it's just a really fun family connection. It's just, I pinch myself. I just can't believe I get to do it.
Awesome. Well done on that as well. Well done on taking the leap and pushing forward as well. Because had you stayed stuck in not wanting to do it, you wouldn't be where you are today as well.
That's right.
You spoke about the Airbnb properties as well and the historical buildings as well. And I've also noticed that this allowed you to connect with some big name networks as well, right? Like HGTV and Magnolia as well. Now, you would have had some brushes with fame along the way, along those lines as well, right? What have you learned from those experiences?
We never signed up to be on those shows. So someone approached us both times and came and filmed and they basically said, this could change your life, but it's like playing the lottery. So here's your ticket. We'll scratch it off. We'll see if the numbers match. And so we had the whole 2 times, a whole process of meeting innovative, creative, incredible people. And so being around that level of creativity and innovation was so much fun. And so we absorbed as much of that as we could, but I filter everything through relationships. I was really looking for, connection. And that was incredible. But it was sort of like a dangled carrot. Both times it was like, hey, let's film this. Let's take it to, the network contracted for it. Let's take it to see if they'll turn this into like a full series. And so it was a little bit tricky for me because it was the promise of success, the promise of the possibility of success. And with that could have become fame. And so it was interesting because it was never the kind of fame I'd ever dreamed of. I didn't want to be Joanna Gaines, as amazing as she is. Like that's not what I wanted to be. I was like, oh, maybe they'll let me write a book if I talk about how excited I am about wallpaper or whatever. So it was interesting because it was like something that was shiny dangled before you and said, don't you want this? And you didn't, but then you thought, well, man, that looks a lot better than what I'm holding up right now. Maybe I do want it. And so when it didn't happen, and then we were asked to do it again, and then it didn't happen again, it was, it was inflating and then deflating and then hopeful and then a disappointment. But at the same time, I am so incredibly grateful that it didn't work out, because then it would have been me taking that same capacity and that same energy and putting it towards something beautiful, and still the wrong thing.
Mm.
Still the wrong thing.
Something beautiful,
So
but still the wrong thing, hey?
still the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I described it the other day saying, I felt like I was wearing the wrong shoes, but they were Jimmy Choo shoes. They were real nice shoes, but the wrong
Not,
ones nonetheless.
not meant for you, basically, right?
Not
Or
meant for me.
yeah, at that time, and now, if would it be different now?
No, no, it's been so fun to, you know, and the greatest thing is we've literally stayed friends with the people from those projects. And we were just with all of them 2 weeks ago. That was like, I'm in the right shoes. These are the people, and my band sang for that gig. It was incredible. I was like, okay, wait, this is how it's supposed to be. So no, if someone came again and said, do you want to try for a design show? Really what we've learned is that's really been my husband's lane. Like, he really is the forerunner in our design efforts. And
Mhm.
a lot of people, but it just looks better when a couple does it and the girl picks
Yeah.
out the light fixture. For some reason, we just think I don't know, that's silly. But really he's the driver behind that. So I would come alongside him and say, yeah, babe, do a show. I'm here. I'm all about it.
Mm.
But it's not what we do. It's what we enjoy when it's for our family, but that's really his profession.
Mhm.
And so it would be like someone asking him, wouldn't you want to be on a show about a book? Well, no, I don't even write. I like to read. She's the writer. So it's kind of like we've landed more solidly in our lanes, celebrating the other from a side. So it's good.
That's beautiful, and you got to celebrate each other. That's what it's all about
Yes,
as well.
that's right.
I like that you mentioned the connection piece as well, because especially in this century, connecting with like-minded people as well is so important. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, collaborations work with like-minded people. There's gone are the days where we think that we can work as in a silo environment. We can't do that anymore. You got to collaborate and work with people. You'll be surprised how many like-minded people are out there and that are looking for opportunities where they can connect with like-minded people like ourselves as well, right?
Right, right. And that takes humility.
Yeah,
I think it's immaturity and insecurity that want us to believe the lie that we've got the corner on the market. When you can hear when you're fueled from someone else's creativity, that takes humility,
yeah,
because you're like, oh, they have a brilliant idea. It doesn't make your idea any less cool.
correct.
It's just two cool ideas now in the room instead of just one. And
Exactly.
it's not about winning, you know?
Yeah.
So it's cool.
And if you do want to win, you win together, right? Don't try and win
That's right. That's
alone as
exactly right.
well. So
Yeah.
important. Thank you for sharing that. I want to speak a bit more about your book as well, right? Because you speak about the church, your personal history in church. You grew up in church as well, right? And you were very
Yes.
involved in church. Then you went through this phase of deconstruction, or what people call deconstruction of religion.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming
Mhm.
that's moving away from religion. Now, even still, you still talk about spirituality and you wonder a lot. What would you say is the biggest difference in the faith of the younger Melinda versus
Mhm.
the Melinda of today?
Um, when I was younger, in a fundamentalist religious upbringing, the impetus from spiritual growth was fear. Was like, how far can I outrun the devil? Or,
Wow.
all the things that I need to do to bind up the wrong things and to loose the good things of heaven. And so it was very fear based. And I was on the lookout for where God wasn't, better not go there. That's opening the door to evil. And so everything was very anxious. I was very anxious. Um, and I think now the biggest difference is, instead of looking for the devil everywhere, I feel like I look for the face of God everywhere and find it so readily available. And it doesn't all look the same. And so the fear, I still have to push that away, because that's a very loud, strong motivator. But it's curiosity was not celebrated. It was certitude. So I think the biggest difference is not as much fear and not as much certainty. Room for mystery and God everywhere.
Wow. So now that you mentioned God as well, it's very interesting that let's talk about the fear first, because a lot of people are conditioned into this fear, not only in Christianity, I guess it's in all religions as well, where they say, if you don't do good, then you're going to go to hell, or the devil is going to come. I mean, that's so conditioning, because who is a human, another human, to say exactly what would happen in your life at a later stage, right? They're not God as well. So they kind of install this fear in us when we're growing up, and they expect us to stick with it all this time. But of course, we do get to the point where we can educate ourselves and understand that God is really within us and nowhere else, right? That's what I believe, that we are God, because nobody can say they've seen God. Do you think that God is really within us?
Yes, absolutely. Like inescapably. I feel like we don't always recognize it. Thomas Merton says we're all walking around shining like the sun. Like we just don't know it. Yes, I do. I think the tricky thing about religion, the beautiful thing about religion is that in its best, is that it tries to give words to something so grand so that we can grasp it.
Yeah.
It just gets afraid when we loosen our grip. So it's like trying to take the ocean, like let's pretend so this is me just trying to give words. This is just me trying to be well-intended. I mean, I could totally botch this. So, but it's almost like trying to take the vastness of God. So it's like you're trying to take the ocean, and then religion in its best intention tries to take the vastness of God in the ocean and put it in the sink.
Yeah.
And say, see, it's right there.
Yeah.
And then you're like, so then you just live in the sink, right? You're just in the sink. And then you go out into the world and you're like, there's an ocean. Who knew? And then people are like, well, you better get back in the sink. But you're like, but did you see all this water?
Yeah.
And everyone's swimming in it. It's amazing, And so, but they, the sink's like over here, and they're protective of it. And
Yeah.
you're just like, should I get back in the sink? But once you swim in the ocean, you just can't get back in the sink.
No, true. So while we're speaking about religion, and you mentioned spirituality as well, right? So how would you differentiate? Are you both religious now and spiritual, or have you just
No, not religious.
Not religious. Okay.
I'm not religious. I'm looking at a book that's sitting over there on my meditation pillow. Everything is spiritual is what it's called. I just I have such an affinity for and curiosity. I keep going back to that word. For God, for the divine. There's been a time in my faith where I couldn't even pray. Like I would sit there and go, all the words I have are religious language. And so I don't even know how to, in this seeking for authenticity, I don't even know how to have an authentic conversation with you, God. So I was sitting the other morning, and I was just sitting, I was meditating, and I thought, it's almost silly to me that we feel like we have to figure out words to swim in the ocean, so I'm like, I'm just going to swim in the ocean this morning. Like sitting quiet to me is the most spiritual thing, especially as a talker, that I can do. Sitting quiet, recognizing the blades of grass, recognizing the breeze as it sweeps across your face, or the sunlight as it breaks through the window, or the laugh of a baby, or, music, regardless of whether it's like spiritual music at all or something. When it moves you in that way, you find yourself swaying. Like that's God to me. That's spirituality to me.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So I also believe both. So I have a split between religion and spirituality. So I do both. But I just, because a lot of people tend to mix up religion, and with the moment you talk about spirituality, they think you're talking about religion, but they fail to realize it's not the same. It's completely different. Like, with the meditation practices, for example, as well. You don't find religious leaders, maybe to some extent, they do meditation, but not as much as you do it. Spiritual world is all about finding yourself and asking yourself these deep down questions as well, and connecting to your higher purpose, right? We all have that one. So that's where our being is formed.
Well, and growing up in a Jesus tradition, it seems a lot cooler to me now, right? Because if you look at the teachings of Jesus, who was not religious, it's like, oh, you came here to teach us to be human. What a beautiful example. I definitely want to apply the tenets that you've taught to my life. So in that way, I mean, like I haven't thrown out like a deity or an example. Um, it's just that I thought Jesus was all the, and then you really read about Jesus and you learn about Jesus. You're like, you're not that guy they say you are at all. Like
Yeah.
in so many ways, there's so much more freedom there, and the life that he came to teach us how to be human, the life that he lived is like, it's so it draws. I think spirituality draws you in, and religion drives you either deeper into religion or away from it because it's just so rote.
Yeah,
So
and it's so directed by man. It's just the
right,
way that they push people. They want to condition people, and you know it's sad that when they do this in the process, it really causes racial division, not racial, religious division as well. And I
yeah,
think a lot of the people out there, or you know, to the audience, you need to realize that there's one God. There's just different ways that we pray to that one God, and that way could be Hinduism, Christianity, Muslim, Jewish, whatever it may be. So the point that we're trying to make is respect anyone for whatever religion they are. It starts with respect and being that human. It's all about humanity, right? Respect everyone equally as well. So this was a great conversation on religion as well. Religion is always, you know, something powerful. If I look at religion and let's, you know, when we talk about races as well, I keep saying to people, irrespective if you're black, white, Indian, colored, whatever you are, you're still human. So
yeah.
don't look at the person differently because they're a different race. Respect that person in the same way, like we would do with religion as well.
Well, just think about this. Like I'm sitting in my living room in Shelbyville, Kentucky. Okay. And you're there
Yeah.
way across the ocean, not the sink. And our stories are so specific to us, but they connect us universally. So why would we think that when it comes to the one who created us all, like that we would have to appropriate that?
Yeah.
Like your experience that you got up and you had this morning is less than mine just because it's not the same brand. It just feels so silly when you think about it that way.
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah, it's like so uncommon sense in a way. So
Right.
and people don't get that as well. So people need to open up. And you know, I would suggest to people when they come across anything about religion, so ask themselves the deep questions, like why am I practicing religion in this way? Why am I, and it doesn't have to be religion, can be anything as well, right? If you're going through whatever state you're going through now as well, ask yourself those questions. Oh, but why is Nolan drinking so much now? Why am I doing this? What, you know, when you ask yourself these questions, then that higher purpose will come back with the answers. Like you said earlier on, Melinda, as well, you said it beautifully. The answers are always there, right? We just need to look for it.
That's right.
It's so quite
That's
important.
right.
So wow, what a journey. Thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for inspiring us today. I'm really grateful that you could come on the show and inspire us with your journey through life. Tell me, how would the listeners, how would our audience get in contact with you more so as well? We will share the information at the end of the podcast, at the end of the interview. How can they get hold of your book as well? Because it sounds really fascinating and a good read as
Aw,
well.
thank you. Well, my website is melindamhardin.com, and you can order the book from there. Um, you can find me on Instagram, same name, Melinda M. Hardin, and then Melinda Hardin 502 for Facebookers. The book is on Amazon. It's on barnesandnoble.com. And like I said, you could also just click and direct it. It takes you right to the Amazon website from my website. I love doing podcasts. I love doing public speaking, especially for women's groups. And so I would love to do that, or even Zoom to your book club, or there's lots of ways we can connect, and I would love to.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. We will share the information if you did not get a chance to write it down. And I'm sure if they just go on to Google and put in Uneclipsed by Melinda Hardin, your book should come up as well, right?
Yes, uneclipsed, because we're not eclipsed, because we're all uneclipsed. We're not
Yeah,
behind the shadows. Yes.
absolutely. And it has to do with the shadows as well. Now that you mentioned the eclipse, you think about the shadows, right?
That's
Immediately.
right.
So thank you. Thank you, Melinda. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So thank you everyone for listening to our show today. It's really been a pleasure to have Melinda. Any last thoughts, any advice for the audience out there?
Oh goodness, I didn't know you were going to ask this. I guess one of the things that I started to do, so my advice to come out from behind your shadows. I feel like my book was sort of like my comeback story. And one step each day is just I think we think about authenticity, it's kind of a buzzword, but really it's your purest expression of your purest self. So I would say, as you're going in the direction of answering questions or having responses, check in with yourself. You don't have to tell anybody that you're doing this. Just check in with yourself and say, is that preset? Do I really mean that? Like, what if I were to answer as the purest expression of my purest self? What would I say? And then try it out.
Wow.
And then you'll find that you become the thing that you practice. So if you practice telling the truth, you're a truth teller of yourself. You're authentic.
Wow. Authenticity is the right way to go. So purest expression of your purest self as well. So, and deep down, we all have it as well. If we can find
Yes.
any one of you can find it as well. You just need to dig deep and ask these questions of yourself as well. So thank you so much for listening. If you're watching this video on YouTube as well, be sure to make a comment at the bottom, like the video as well. Ask Melinda any questions. I'm sure she would love to hear questions about the interview as well. And also share this video as well. And on the right hand side, there's a subscribe button. So be sure to subscribe so that you can have a look at future podcasts as well. So this is Nolan Pillay, your host for today. And thank you so much for listening. And we wish you the best on your journey through life as well. Thank you once again, Melinda. Really appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Nolan. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.